Tech and clips.
Yeah. They recorded studio magic in the Beatles' most pivotal song, Tomorrow Never Knows. Guys, and shout outs to the channel. You can't unhear this, for this one. And shout outs to the Libido for throwing this in my way. Guys, just so you guys know, this is a buy me a coffee suggestion, so just in case you want to support the channel, links in the description. You can, tap in, support me, support the channel. Yes. Once again, they recorded magic, in the Beatles' most pivotal song, Tomorrow Never Knows. Let's watch this video and see, what it will unravel. Let's watch this together, guys.
Tomorrow Never Knows is arguably the most pivotal song of the Beatles' career. It's a mind-bending 3-minute collage of sonic experiments that helped kick open the doors to a bold new era for popular music.
Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream.
It's also packed with production quirks, anomalies, and even a few unsolved mysteries. In this episode, I'm going to take you through the fascinating recording history of Tomorrow Never Knows and dissect some of these curiosities. As a fair warning, once I point them out, you can't unhear this. Tomorrow Never Knows is the final song on the Beatles' landmark 1966 album Revolver. Despite appearing last on the album, Tomorrow Never Knows was actually the first song that the band worked on for the Revolver sessions, following an unprecedented 5-month-long break after their previous album, Rubber Soul. After a much-needed reset and some encounters with LSD, the band was brimming with new ideas, among them a new song concept from John that defied pretty much every convention of pop music at the time. The lyrics didn't rhyme, the chord progression didn't really progress, and instead of romantic love, the subject matter was expanding one's psychic consciousness through ego death. Naturally, the recording process would also be anything but normal. The band assembled at EMI Studios on April 6, 1966, to collaborate on John's new composition, which at this stage was known as The Void, and listed on studio documentation as Mark I. An important new addition to the supporting team at EMI was a young, creative, and ambitious engineer named Jeff Emmerich, who would help pioneer many of the innovative recording techniques used on the Revolver sessions and beyond. For his first order of Beatle business, Jeff would indulge the band's newfound curiosity with tape loops, inspired by the musique concrète movement that used recorded sounds to create avant-garde sound collages. For their first attempt on The Void, the band recorded a short loop of guitars and drums, which was then slowed down and drenched in echo to create a droning backing track. Jeff's other engineering task was to satisfy John's request of making his voice sound like the Dalai Lama chanting from a mountaintop. His solution was to pump John's voice through a Leslie speaker, which was normally paired with an organ to create a vibrato effect through the use of a revolving chamber. Pardon the pun.
Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream.
Satisfied with the Dalai Lenin transformation, John recorded a vocal track on top of the existing guitar and drum loop. Meanwhile, Paul and Ringo added a bass and drum track. There was a small problem with this approach, however. The backing loop drifted increasingly out of sync with the overdubbed live parts. Keep in mind, in the pre-digital era, everything had to be timed manually. Digital tools like Auto-Tune were still decades away. Facing this challenge, the band scrapped this initial idea, but would revisit using tape loops in a slightly different way soon. Returning to their usual method of live recording, the four Beatles, John on vocals, George on tambourine, Paul on bass, and Ringo on drums, made 2 attempts at a suitable backing track, settling on the second one, labeled Take 3, as the final. Contrary to some accounts, Ringo's hypnotic drum part here is not a tape loop. It's 100% live Ringo, and it's frankly amazing. Tape loops did come back into the picture at this point. Before heading home that night, Paul suggested a new idea, that the band record their own tape loops and bring them to EMI the next day. With tape segments of random sounds in hand, the band returned to EMI on April 7th and sorted through their overnight creations. Of the many options, they settled on 5 that would make it into the final song. Due to the heavy saturation and other manipulation, There's some debate over what these original sounds were, but I'll play a snippet of how each one sounds when isolated. Here's the first, which is typically cited as Paul's voice sped up to sound like a seagull. The second, an orchestra, sped up. The third, notes played on a mellotron, sped up. The fourth, more notes played on a mellotron, sped up. And fifth, a sitar. Reversed and sped up. Unlike with digital sampling, creating and adding these loops in this analog environment was a formidable challenge. Each loop was simultaneously fed into a separate tape machine, while the various loops were routed to the main mixing console. The band, sitting at the mixing board, conducted a live performance of all of these incoming loops, fading up and fading down the different sounds at different moments. The marvelous end result of their efforts wound up on track 2 of the 4-track master tape. After the exhausting tape loop session, the band decided to take a break from The Void and work on a few other songs, including George's new song Taxman, which would become relevant to the completion of Tomorrow Never Knows, but more on that later. On April 22nd, 2 weeks after the tape loop session, the band revisited Tomorrow Never Knows to add some finishing touches. To enhance the song's psychedelic ambiance, they added 2 sonic elements to the backdrop: a simple organ part and second, an Indian instrument called a tambura, heard clearly during the lead-in and continuing throughout the song. Also on this day, John re-recorded his main vocal track, but with different effects applied to the first and second sections. For the first half, he double-tracked his vocals. That is, sang it through twice to help enhance the sound of his voice.
Lay down all thoughts, surrender to the void.
Then, for the second half of the song, his voice was put through the Leslie speaker to get the vibrato effect he used on take 1.
That love is all and love is everyone.
So if you listen carefully, you'll notice 2 distinct vocal treatments in the song, separated by the solo section in the middle.
It is not dying. It is not living.
Speaking of that middle solo section, which at this point featured a bunch of tape loops, they decided to add another Beatle first here, a backwards guitar solo. There's a debate, however, over who actually played this scorching backwards solo. According to the official booklet inside the Revolver Deluxe Edition, George Harrison is playing lead guitar here. But when the backwards solo is reversed to the original direction, it sounds strikingly similar to the guitar solo from Taxman, the first song on Revolver. Taxman was indeed a George Harrison song, but the guitar solo on Taxman was actually performed by Paul. Not coincidentally, that session took place the night before the Tomorrow Never Knows solo was added. The 2 solos sound so similar that some people believe it's actually copied from the same recording. Upon closer analysis, the 2 solos don't line up exactly, but they definitely share an identical style and sound, meaning it was likely Paul playing both, contrary to the liner notes. Regardless of who's actually playing, the 2 similar solos form a clever link from the last track on Revolver to the first, bookending the album. There's also a fascinating little analog-era quirk caused by this innovative backwards solo. As I mentioned earlier, John double-tracked his vocals in the first section. But the last word of the first section is mysteriously missing the double-tracking right before the solo section begins.
It is being. It is being.
So what happened here? Well, this anomaly can be explained by analyzing how the solo made it onto the original multi-track tape. John's primary vocal was recorded on track 4. His double-tracked vocal was recorded to track 3, along with the tambourine and organ. Given the limited tape space and a 4-track setup, the backwards guitar solo was also overdubbed onto track 3, in the 30-second gap between John's 2 main vocal sections. But to get the backwards sounding effect to work, the guitar solo was played forwards, with the multi-track tape recording in reverse. So here's what likely happened. At the very end of the guitar solo overdub, an EMI engineer simply punched out a bit too late, copying over the last snippet of John's double-tracked vocal, along with the tambourine and organ, which were also on track 3. You can hear all 3 drop out a bit too early before the solo section begins. Unlike in a modern digital recording studio, once it happened, they couldn't undo this. So this happy little accident was left in, as a neat little artifact of the analog recording era. Before wrapping up, they included one final touch to close out the song, a random bit of honky-tonk piano that had been recorded a few weeks earlier. With that, the recording of Tomorrow Never Knows, still titled Mark I at this point, was complete. But as usual, the anomalies didn't end there. At the time, Beatles songs were mixed for 2 separate versions, single-channel mono, which was the dominant format at the time, and 2-channel stereo, which was still a more experimental format. Because these different versions were often created during different sessions, and the band only reviewed the mono mixes, this led to some odd variations between the 2 mixes. On the mono mix, you'll notice different patterns in where the tape loops come in, different effects on the guitar solo, and even a few extra seconds of honky-tonk piano at the end. Interestingly, a small batch of the first mono pressings of Revolver in the UK were mistakenly released with a different mono mix of the song. As you can imagine, those early misprints are now collectible. For the stereo version, my favorite quirk is a seemingly random high-pitched noise heard about halfway through. This little anomaly is actually a bit of guitar feedback from the backwards solo that was likely left in by mistake. Ironically, now that stereo has become the preferred distribution format, it's weird to hear this mistake missing from the mono version. The last bit to be addressed was the song's title, which isn't found in the lyrics at all. Instead, John borrowed it from an offhand remark Ringo made in 1964.
What can you say? Oh, tomorrow never knows.
On August 5th, 1966, Revolver hit store shelves, with Tomorrow Never Knows sequenced last, marking the summit of this extraordinary album. Tomorrow Never Knows was, in a word, unconventional. But its brilliance was also immediately apparent. George Harrison called it easily the most amazing new thing we've ever come up with.
Wow.
An early review mentioned the song specifically as among, quote, the most revolutionary ever made by a pop group. No other song in their career marked such an abrupt shift, like stepping from a black and white world into full color. I find it incredible that this piece of transcendent music emerged less than 3 years after She Loves You. The song's innovative use of the recording studio paved the way for countless other groundbreaking hits in their catalog.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going.
Heavy reliance on studio production, however, made it virtually impossible for the band to play these songs live. No matter as they had decided to give up touring altogether in late 1966, never having played any songs from the Revolver album live. In subsequent years, many other artists have performed creative covers of the song, including Phil Collins, Brian Eno and Phil Manzanera, Los Lobos, even John's son Sean, fronting the Claypool Lennon Delirium. It was also used to great effect in the AMC television series Mad Men to signal the vast generational shift in culture taking place in the mid-1960s. The entire Revolver album has risen in appreciation over the past few decades for being a watershed moment, not only in the Beatles' career but in music history. In a year of landmark genre-defining albums from artists such as the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, the Byrds, Frank Zappa, and many more. Revolver stands tall among giants. Like its cover art, the album is an eclectic collage from Texas and Yellow Submarines to the sounds of India and Motown. Its grand finale, Tomorrow Never Knows, was the launch pad into the psychedelic universe that would define the following year's Summer of Love. Listen more closely and you can hear the future of electronic music emanating from its thunderous pulse. Tomorrow Never Knows might not be the most well-known Beatles song, but to me, it's the most rewarding listening experience of their career. In less than 3 spectacular minutes, this groundbreaking production transports you to another dimension by way of a piece of ancient wisdom that seems more relevant today than ever before.
Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream.
So what do you think of Tomorrow Never Knows and its many anomalies? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching and for subscribing.
Wow, guys. Wow. Shout outs to You Can't Hear This once again for this insightful, video about the Beatles and their music. Their song, Tomorrow Never Knows. As a music reactor, as a reviewer, I found, the recording, studio magic in the Beatles, most pivotal song, Tomorrow Never Knows, to be an absolute gold mine, of musical insight and historical, importance. First off, I love the fact that this video does an outstanding job, of peeling back the layers, of innovation that made Tomorrow Never Knows not just ahead of its time, but outside of its time. I love the fact that it wasn't just a Beatles song, it was technological and artistic, revolution captured on tape. Right from the moment, the narrator, broke down the tape loops, techniques. I was hooked. The way the Beatles, especially John Lennon and George Martin experimented, with layering loop, reversing sounds, and using variable, tape speeds, definitely showed just how fearless they were in the studio. Once again, as a reactor, it's exciting to see how these sonic elements created a soundscape unlike anything that had ever been recorded before in mainstream music. I also love the use of the Leslie speaker on John Lennon's vocals. That was just mind-blowing. To me, this wasn't just a vocal effect. It was an attempt to transcend the human voice, to turn it into something surreal, disembodied and psychedelic, and for a band in 1966 to even think of trying this, to me was wild. The part that really stuck with me was the explanation of artificial double tracking. I believe they call it the ADT. A technique invented for the Beatles at Abbey Road, which I feel like I changed vocal recording forever. As someone who listens to modern music all the time, it's so incredible to realize how many techniques used today were born out of experimentation during this very recording. Yeah, what I also appreciated most was how the video doesn't just geek out on gear. I love how it ties all these innovations in the back to the artistic intention. Tomorrow Never Knows. I've heard the song personally. I have to say this wasn't just a song. It was far more like an experience. A sonic voyage. Into the mind and beyond. Yeah. So to me, if you're a Beatles fan, which I know most of you guys are on the platform on this channel, a music production nerd, or even just someone curious how we got from music mono recordings to the layered complexities of modern pop and rock. I feel like at this video it's so essential, definitely an essential viewing. As a reactor, it made me want to revisit Revolver, the entire album, with a whole new level of appreciation, for just how far, the Beatles were pushing the limits of what music, could be. Honestly, this kind of content, makes you, fall in love, with music all over again, I have to say, yeah. So once again, shout out to the ability. Once again, shout out to You Can't Hear This, for this, insightful video. Guys, let me know if you want me to continue checking out more documentaries, more music insights, and such as this one. I'm so glad, to do just that with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Name is Philip. Until the next reaction, take care, stay safe, peace out.